Good morning, everyone. It is now 11:15, so time to officially launch our panel, our breakout session. And this is Breaking the Glass Ceiling, the journey of young Latino professionals in the credit union industry. I am your moderator. I'm the opposite of a young Latino professional. My name is Carla Decker. I'm president and CEO of DC Credit Union, and I'm a former board member for Inclusiv. Buenos días a todos. Before we start, we're gonna take a couple minutes to just go over some housekeeping items. So first of all, know that all sessions are being recorded, and the recordings will become available in about 2 weeks, and they will be accessible through both the conference center and the Inclusiv website. To maintain the integrity of the recordings, we do ask that all of the participants place themselves on mute. You are also encouraged to set your view on grid view so that you can see everybody else who is participating on this session today. Time permitting, we are going to have a question and answer period at the end of our session. In the meantime, you can use the chat tool to ask questions. Just message the participating labeled asterisk, asterisk, questions for speakers, asterisk, asterisk. And that way you can post your questions to the panel. My thanks already to Rene Barlas Martinez, who is going to be serving as the person monitoring our chat. We encourage you to share your insights and your learnings via social media with the hashtag CDCUCON2020. And if you happen to experience any technical issues during the presentation, please send a private chat to our technical team, AdvanceNet. And now for introductions. This morning, we are going to hear from 3 amazing credit union young professionals, Diana Cervantes, Fabiana DeGuire, and Marisela Zambrano. The intent of this panel is to learn through their personal journeys how credit unions can engage in meaningful and productive ways with Latino professionals and Latino communities. So allow me to take a moment to introduce our fabulous panelists. And if you wouldn't mind just waving as I call on you. Diana Cervantes is Vice President of Community and Business Development for Premier America Credit Union and leads the Premier America Foundation. As a champion of change, she has supported local communities for over 20 years by introducing responsible, affordable, and transparent financial services for underserved and unbanked communities. Diana is board member for the Ventura County Library Foundation, a steering committee member for the City of Los Angeles, a committee member for the City of Los Angeles High Cost Anti-Predatory Lending Advisory Group. Welcome, Diana. Fabiana DeGuire is a financial inclusion officer for Hope Credit Union. In her capacity as FIO, Fabiana manages the strategic direction and growth of Crece con Hope, Grow with Hope, the program developed to expand financial inclusion for Hispanics and immigrants in the Deep South. Her work involves developing key partnerships, providing financial counseling, products, and other related services to the immigrant population in the Deep South. It is through this work that Hope obtained Inclusiv's Juntos Avanzamos designation, making it the first credit union in Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Tennessee with this accreditation. Welcome, Fabiana.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Marisela Zambrano. Marisela began her career at Ileana Financial Credit Union as a teller in 2013. Marisela now serves as Director of Business Development and Certified BSA Officer. As Director of Business Development, she assisted Ileana Financial in developing an individual tax identification number, or ITIN program, which led Ileana Financial Credit Union to earn their Juntos Avanzamos designation. Marisela also serves as volunteer of the board for the Prairie State College Foundation. So welcome, ladies, and welcome all of our participants. The format of our panel is going to include 3 questions. We're also going to share with you a small video. And as I said, our intent is really through both storytelling and by featuring these great credit union professionals to really provide you an opportunity to see, to hear how credit unions can better engage with Latino professionals and by extension with Latino communities. So let's start with our storytelling and our first question. How about if we start with Diana? Tell us about your personal journey and what brought you to be part of the credit union movement.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I think we each have such a special journey, and with me, I think it all begins with my upbringing. I'm first generation Mexican American, and I was that child that would translate for my parents and help them, complete applications and help them with calls and everything that we did. So naturally, helping people was actually something that really catered to me. I think my own journey started with, as an upbringing, really being in a very strict, Mexican household, you could say. We learn that the whole aspect of our community really translates to being able to help others. And I think for me, as I grew, not only personally, but also professionally, it allowed me an opportunity to also gravitate to this type of work. And, through one of the things that I can credit the most have been really our mentors that we've had and that I've had through my life, not only through school, but also professionally. That's really set aside, everything that we do, not only because once you start working professionally, hard work really does pay off. But at the end of the day, it's those mentors that really hold your hand and take you to that next level. Especially for me, being first generation, I didn't know much about, higher education or certain jobs in a credit union or, financial services. So being able to get introduced to that and then really help people, not only from personal, but also, overall in the community, really helped me shape that. And, one of the things that I always share is that, as I was growing up, especially in our household, we spoke Spanish. That was just, there was no questions asked. It was Spanish and that's it. And, for many years, I couldn't understand the concept of why that was so important until later, professionally, I saw the value of our community and how vulnerable we could be, and being able to be that person to help, speak for others and introduce them to responsible products and services and give them those options and educate them about, what the credit system is like here for them was very important. So definitely a learning opportunity for me. And I'm still learning, right? So still finding ways to see how we could learn from each other and really scale up this sort of type of work.
Thank you, Diana. Fabiana, would you like to share with us your credit union journey?
I would love to. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for having me today. I think one of the beautiful things about our journeys is that although we've all walked different paths to get where we are, I think the root of why we do what we're doing is very similar. And my experience from Diana is very different. I came to the United States 15 years ago already as an exchange student, and what was supposed to be a one-year exchange program turned into college and turned into a career, and here we are 15 years later. And when I started working shortly after college, I was in the financial services industry as well. And it was a firm that provides retirement planning services and brokerage services locally. And after a couple of years in doing that, I realized that was just not really where my heart was, that there was so much more that I could do, not only to help myself, but also others. And that's when I came across a position available at Hope to be able to help them establish and develop their, what we call Credit Step and Hope, which is a program to assist our Hispanic residents in the South. And Hope already had a long track record of serving African American and disenfranchised communities across the South. So really with that knowledge and with the expertise of myself and other team members, we were able to establish what is our ITIN lending and working with the immigrant communities. And it was the same, it kind of goes back to what Diana mentioned. It's really what really drives you to come to this kind of work is to be able to help others and give them an opportunity that I feel that we're lucky to have in many ways.
That is fantastic. And yes, this theme of helping others and wanting to do that as a sort of as something that is deep rooted within you is coming loud and clear. Thank you. Yeah. Marisela, your turn. Help us understand your journey.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's nice to meet everyone virtually. My name is Marisela Zambrano, and I'm with Ileana Financial Credit Union. I began my journey at a credit union 7 years ago. And for me, it was more of a passion. It was, my family was my inspiration. As Diana mentioned, I was also that child who would translate for their parents. I'm first generation Mexican American. So everything as far as becoming educated, going into college, going into a university, furthering my career, everything was pretty much a struggle, and I was independent. It was on my own. It wasn't really like I could rely on my parents. So to me, that became a passion of mine, to become a mentor, to become a leader that can help people like me or make the path a little bit easier by experience. So Ileana Financial has a branch located in Chicago Heights, Illinois, which is the city that I was born and raised in. So knowing people like me and knowing the demographics here, I knew that there was a need for the underserved, undocumented, underbanked population of our community. And it was just a goal of mine to make sure that I was giving back to the community that I was born and raised in and currently still reside in. I went to college in the city as well. So to me, it was such a personal inspiration and also goal of mine to give back.
That is amazing. And I think, you know, a couple of things come out. This idea of just how closely connected to your families you are, how your upbringing has really shaped and influenced your objective of being, you know, mission oriented and mission focused as it relates to looking for your place in not only society but in the workforce as well. I think the other thing that comes that maybe is also kind of a theme is that I hear you speak a lot about community and family, but to a certain extent you were kind of alone, whether you were here as an exchange student all by yourself or you were the translator for your family. I remember being a translator for my family as well back in the 70s when I was like a tiny little kid, you know, and so this is really interesting from the perspective of better understanding just the family dynamics and what it is that moves us not only to our careers, but also to life choices, including the choice of where to conduct our financial businesses, our financial transactions. So let's shift a little bit and think about perhaps what might be one thing that you might have done differently in your careers in credit unions, or maybe what might be one thing that you would seek to do more to build a more inclusive culture. And this is particularly, I think, an appropriate question for all of you, given that you are both in business development, in financial inclusion, and in that field of, as you said, of giving voice to those who otherwise would not have a voice. So Fabiana, how about if we start with you?
So I think one thing that's more prominent now is that we're shedding light on the fact that this growing population needs the services that we are providing. And we are, I will say, more capable and better suited to do that for them than your mainstream banking. So I wish that we would have been more diverse in building our teams earlier on than we are. And even still, as many credit unions are working on doing that, it can still be a bit of a struggle. I mean, you just mentioned yourself that you experienced that back in the 70s where you were here with your family. And so why was not that the case, you know, so many years ago? So why do we have to wait so long for us to be able to realize that this was an issue that we needed to start tackling earlier?
Absolutely, yes. Diana, your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Fabiana really nailed it. I think as I think back personally, and one of the things that I'm doing different, with my family, is growing up, like I mentioned, it was a very strict household, so we weren't really allowed to have a lot of outspokenness. You listened and that was it. And I think when I started school, and you had educators and mentors that were empowering me to be outspoken and assertive, and I was like, oh my God, what do you mean? So it was so different. That culture was just so different for me, and it was kind of culture shocking. And through a lot of reading and mentorship and just overcoming even just personal things, I think that I was able to strike that balance to still build that respect for my culture, but also open myself and put myself out there so that I could help the community and not feel like I was invading in anybody's privacy, and really speak with integrity and allow people from any level of work or tradesmanship to come into the branches and feel that they were welcome there as well. So there's definitely still a lot of learning for me to do. But one of the things that I'm doing different is really empowering, especially the young community, to really believe in what they want and not be shy, to help other people and really speak up and really find their goal. So those are some of the things that I think that could definitely help.
Very cool. Thank you. And Marisela?
So I think my journey, what influenced me is that I took everything, and what was one of my stronger points was that I did take everyone's situation personally. I put myself in their shoes, and I was able to understand the family, the child that had to deal with, adult situations and translate for their parents. So I was able to kind of like ease that whole situation. One thing that I would probably do differently is I was very focused. So my focal point was helping those that were in need. That I think I wasn't too aware of my surroundings and how other people were going to think about that or what their perspective was. So when I first began my journey at Ileana, I didn't fit in. It was about, like our employees, there was about 60 people and only a handful of them spoke Spanish. So when we had people come in who spoke Spanish, they really weren't able to be assisted in their language. So I would just make an effort of mine to make sure I was a teller. If I was in the drive up, I would go in the front and I would translate for a loan. I would translate for member service or wherever I was needed. I think in order to have a more inclusive environment, training should be ongoing and it should happen early on. We should be able to identify what some people's perspectives are and how to help them through their differences. And we should have diversity training. We should also have sensitivity training. And that way we can just become more well-rounded up with each other.
So training and ongoing learning is also another theme that runs deep in all of your journeys and certainly in all of your values. So speak a little bit about maybe just what it is that you're doing as it relates to linking up, particularly to underserved Latinos. All three of your credit unions are Juntos Avanzamos designated. Is there something specific that you aim at doing, or even though you're all already in a position of responsibility and leadership, is there something special that you would do if you had the power and authority to make a change, to better engage with Latinos?
I can take it on.
Sure.
Go ahead, Fabiana, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, one thing that we're doing internally is that we have created, Marisela just mentioned sensitivity training, cultural training. And so that's one of the things that we work on with our staff at Hope for doing our own board, and also to the rest of our staff that was already part of the staff and when the training was developed. But a part of that is like the IT lending training. That seems to be a little bit of a barrier sometimes when it comes to lending to ITN holders. So, learning how to overcome those, working with different forms of ID, what do you do when somebody comes at the branch that doesn't speak your language? How can we better serve those members if we don't have that bilingual capability on site at the moment? So that's one of the things that we're working on to try to help bridge that gap.
Very cool. Diana, you were going to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to clarify, is this aspirational or is this something that we're currently doing right now?
Your choice.
Okay, I'll go with aspirational. So I think aspirational, obviously, investment is a big thing that, as we compare ourselves to other financial institutions, credit unions typically don't have those large budgets to be able to invest heavily, in the communities. We do a lot of sweat equity work, products and services. And I feel like not always does our work get recognized because we're maybe not able to be in every billboard or every bus or every commercial, right? So I think if I can talk aspirational, I would definitely build some type of fund or community, collaboration marketing fund, so that we could, support Juntos Avanzamos specifically and really put it on steroids so that these type of services can be really supported throughout and engage, I think, more credit unions to be a part of it because it really is a good thing. And you have, two other panelists here that have proven track records of work that they've done and how it's shaped the communities. And I think that if you're able to put that even more on steroids, and the funding is always a big thing, especially once you think of operations, that would be my aspirational thing, to be able to help other credit unions really blow up in these services.
Yeah, and super important, but also very aligned with, our cooperative principles, particularly cooperation amongst cooperatives. So yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Marisela, how about you? Aspirational or something that you already are doing that really positions you well to engage with Latinos?
So the most recent engagement that we have with our community is my involvement with Prairie State College. Is a community college within the same city that I live in and that I also attended school at. So what we have is the Ileana Financial Hispanic Scholarship. So this scholarship is designed for Hispanic students who are not eligible to apply for financial aid because of their legal status or their parent status. So we do have a funding, like Diana mentioned. It is very important to be able to have those resources in order for us to give back to the community and help equip people who are unable to find funding otherwise. So what we do now is we do set aside $2,000 a semester, and we end up sponsoring 4 kids to go to school either a semester or depending on the need, we'll give them $1,000, and then that way we'll have 2 children that we sponsor to go to school for that semester. Another proud moment of ours was that we did collaborate with a group, and their name is Comunidad en Acción. So what they do is they serve Chicago Heights, and they help people fill out their citizenship statuses or fill up the census forms. So anything that comes around, they end up being part of, and we always link with them. We have our banners on site. So that's something that we also are proud of, and we're proud of having our brand with their club as well.
That is fantastic. I think, we have a lot of best practices to share, as well as aspirations and goals that I think are worthy for all of us to tackle in unison, right? In solidarity, if you will. And so availing yourself of a network such as Juntos Avanzamos becomes that much more important and also powerful if we are going to have an impact. I'm being told that perhaps I'm speaking a little bit too softly, so I'm going to try and lift my voice without necessarily, yelling. But I'm hoping that you can all hear me. And if you can't, panelists, just tap your ears and I'll know that you are having difficulty. So we have spoken about your journeys and how you linked up to credit unions, and we are all blessed that you have. But we know that there are many credit unions that actually do have some challenges in recruiting Latinos onto their workforce. And why is that important? Obviously, it's important because if we are going to connect with our communities, then our communities do need to be able to see people like us amongst credit union professionals, amongst those people who are going to serve them. Otherwise, we go back to the 70s again, where we need children who are translating for parents. So we are fortunate to have a small recruiting video that we are going to share with you. Our thanks go to NALCA and to Border Federal Credit Union for making this video possible. So if you wouldn't mind, technical folks, if you could launch the video, please. As the video is launched, I believe that this is going to be something that is available to all of you. Again, it's a very short but to the point video.
I'm having technical difficulties, and I'll get to the video just as soon as I possibly can, Carla. I'm so sorry.
Oh, not a problem. So the video is all about really attracting or connecting to the Latino audience, in creating awareness for the fact that, you know, credit unions are an employer and a potential path for professional development. I'd like to hear your thoughts, panelists, about just not only how we as a sector can better link up to professionals, to young professionals. How do we grow? And we've heard about you know, ongoing learning and succession planning, but how do we grow that pool of Latinos? And most importantly, how do we retain Latino talent for the long term in our own credit unions? Marisela, would you like to get us started?
Yes, definitely. As we all mentioned, I think family is a big influence, and we have to understand different cultures. And you know, I can only speak for myself, but I think it's safe to say that in our culture for Latinos, family is very important. So having a work-life balance, I think having a healthy work-life balance is very imperative for everyone. I know for my situation, I do have a brother who has cerebral palsy, and he's a couple years younger than me. So for me, it's important for me to be able to have that availability, have my employer understand that, you know, we don't believe in rehab places or like, you know, I think it's called for where they have them taken care of by someone else. Like that's our responsibility. So therefore, for me, it is important to have that balance where I know that work would be understanding. Another thing also is like I'm pursuing my master's and with a concentration in leadership, and I have tuition reimbursement benefits. So for me, that retains me, and that gives me that relationship that I'm giving to my employer and they're giving back to me. They're investing in my future and my education. So for me, those are just amazing benefits to have and to retain. And also, as you mentioned, Carla, to have someone that looks like me be part of a leadership role within the organization. And a lot of us are driven by like career-oriented goals, but it also does go with the balance of having family-oriented goals as well.
I'm wondering, Marisela, do you currently have leaders within your credit union that could look like you?
Yes, so we have 5 executives, and 2 of them are from Latino descent. So we do.
Awesome, and congratulations, Ileana. Diana.
Sorry. Yeah, I love it. I think it's so true, and it's so beneficial that we have that, you know, work-life balance. And you're absolutely right. You know, we have, like, I'll tell you personally, I have 3 generations in my household. So I have, you know, my mom, I have myself, and I have my kids. So we're a typical sandwich generation, right? And having this sort of insight, you know, at work is so important because, you're absolutely right. I mean, we live with family, we take care of family. That's really our whole ecosystem, right? So, you can call us a whole different other way of being, but that's really, the Latino culture. I think from the opposite side of that, though, what we could do to help, retain and attract is really not only knowing that we have to, have people look like us, that we have to go out into colleges and recruit people, but really be purposeful about it. Like really have a strategy to say, I'm going to go out to these schools, but I'm not just going to tell them about the credit union. I'm going to give them opportunities, like internship opportunities, for them to really know what a credit union is about. And I think that, they're at that point where you're making or breaking them in their career. And again, going back to that mentorship role, you could really change somebody's life. So by giving them that opportunity to really have internships, which is something that, we're even building right now with local schools, that's going to be a great way for us to introduce this sort of environment to them. And hopefully, they can start right away versus starting later in life and going, oh my God, this is wonderful. I missed this. So really being able to complement it that way.
That is fantastic. I'm going to interject and ask a question for both you, Diana, and Fabiana. And the reason is because you came from financial services, non-credit union financial services. And I'm wondering, how did you make that leap? How did you find out that credit unions even existed?
So I found out about Hope because their offices are in Jackson. They're actually not far away from where I used to work before. So when I started looking into what is it that I really wanted to do next, that was a passion that will really make me want to get out of bed every morning and be joyful to be going into work, I started looking at, what are my options in my market? What is there out there for me to do? Where can I bring my talents and my knowledge that it can really be put to good use? So that's really how it came. It was just a matter that it was something that I knew from our community.
Very cool. So visibility is so important. Diana, how about you?
Yeah, I think, so for me, I live in a financial desert, so there's not really a lot of financial institutions. And, our only options growing up were really like the larger banks. So obviously when, the opportunity came, that was sort of, my natural career path. And then the market crashed, right? And then we all sort of had to take a step back and go, whoa, reevaluate where we're at. And I remember Googling, community service driven, community financial opportunities, and credit unions would come up. And I've always known about credit unions, but I didn't really know about credit unions. And after really looking into them, researching, I thought to myself, oh my God, this is where I belong. And once you go credit union, you never go back. Like, that's just the way it is. You can ask anybody and you will never go back. So that's how I started my transition. And it's been years and I would just never look back. The only thing I would look back to is starting before.
Very cool. Fabiana, I did not give you the opportunity to speak about not only engaging, attracting, growing credit union professionals, Latino credit union professionals, but that important piece that is retention. So what advice would you give us in terms of just retaining Latino talent?
So I think Marisela and Diana already made good points when it comes to attracting them. I think to really retain your Latino talent, mentorship was already mentioned. I think that's really important. If you can have somebody within the organization guide you, if you're really one of those few people, if your credit union is just starting to do this work and you're one of those few people in a key position and management position when you're starting to shed light on why this is a good business case for your organization to be serving the Hispanic community, it's really important to have somebody that will guide you and that will back you, because you're going to find obviously a lot of resistance. Anytime you come into any place that you're trying to change things or shed light into how things should be slightly different, there's always going to be some sort of resistance. So really having people that will back you and help you get those things accomplished is extremely important. So a mentor I think it's really a key for that. And Marisela mentioned the tuition reimbursement program, investing on your talent and help them develop, I think is also key to help them grow. And really, I think when you say that your organization is investing in you and values your contributions and your work, you are more likely to stay and also give more of you to them as well.
Fantastic. And I think that the points that all of you bring, relate to retaining Latino talent, but overall relate to retaining talent in general. And so, creating that culture where the credit union values and invests in employees is integral in, maintaining diversity, the diversity of employees they already have, but also in attracting new employees. I am pleased to say that the video is queued up, and I think we are now able to see it. So let's turn over to it.
Servicios financieros en nuestras comunidades. Y ahora estamos buscando a personas de habla hispana para unirse a nuestro equipo de trabajo. ¿Te interesa?
Credit Unions somos gente ayudando a gente, donde muchos de nuestros socios les encantaría que alguien como tú les asistiera con sus necesidades financieras.
¿Hablas español y te gustaría sobresalir en un credit union?
Entonces, considera una oportunidad de trabajo con nosotros.
Esta es tu oportunidad de servir a la comunidad y superarte profesionalmente.
Nuestra industria necesita gente como tú y como yo, y así, juntos avanzamos.
Bravo. I think in a very concise way that says it all. We are here, and yes, Latinos will make our workforce stronger. It'll make our institutions stronger, and certainly will enable us to attain and reach that objective of really connecting with a broader audience, in this case, the Latino audience. As I said, the video is, I think, available for anybody and everybody to use it. And again, my thanks to NALCUP for both producing that and making it widely available. We were just talking about retention. We talked about mentorship, but I know that before we move forward, I do know that there are some questions that our participants have posed. And so now is the time, participants, listen up. If you have a question, please go ahead and use the chat. You may send your question directly to the participant that is labeled as questions for speakers, and we will get to those. I believe that right now there are maybe 6 questions, and so we are going to start with the first one. And what I'm going to ask panelists is that as I read out the question, if you wouldn't mind just going ahead and jumping in and answering, that would be fantastic, as opposed to my calling out on you. So, this first question, which website or white papers would you recommend to find trustable metrics about Latino access to financial services?
That's a really good question. So I can tell you that just from experience, NCLR Unidos US does really good research, and I haven't seen their white papers like lately, but I know that they have some out there that give you some specific metrics with regards to things like that.
Also, Pew Research has really good documentation on our Latino population, and also information on their banking needs and usage.
Fabiana, I may have spoken over you at the beginning. Could you repeat that source again?
Pew Research. It's another great place where you can find great resources.
Awesome. I'm just going to add that you can also go to your local governments to get local data. Most local governments will have an office that either serves Latinos or has an interest as it relates to like community investment, and they should also have good information for you as well. Moving on to question number 2. What steps would you suggest that a credit union take if there is a need to serve in this area in our market, but our resources, especially human capital, are sparse? How can we build the capacity and competency?
That's also a great question. My recommendation or suggestion for that would be to just do research within the culture and the community within. Also, we began by researching a lot of like the documentation and the different forms of documentation that we can accept and that would be part of our membership identification program. And another thing that we also offered was like a Spanish class, and it would just give us like the basic Spanish, and we also learned how to use like Google Translate when we didn't have the capital to communicate with someone who spoke a different language from us.
Fantastic.
I think those are good first steps if you're not able to attract that workforce. But if you happen to have that opportunity in the future, highly recommend that you invest in attracting Hispanic talent to your organization. From what we've experienced at Hope, we have noticed that our branches and our locations are our most diverse with our most bilingual staff tend to way outperform our other branches when it comes to working with our Hispanics. And one thing we've noticed is that Hispanics will prefer to deal with somebody like them that speaks their language. So that's once you start researching more about the community and how to better serve them, you're going to find that's one of the things that is a recurrent, that is a constant. So definitely address that when you have an opportunity, if you do in the future.
Yeah, I think for us, one of the things that has really helped out too is an understanding of even who your employees are. So for example, we found out that, through certain locations of where our branches are located, we don't have a lot of Mexican people living there. We have a lot of Central American, right? So that also is very important. And then if you don't have the subject matter expertise in-house, one of the things that you could also do is reach out to the local consulates. And what will happen there is that they'll not only help you get educated on the financial system in their country, but it'll also help you get educated with ID requirements. And they are phenomenal, where they will come out and they'll train you, they'll educate you, they'll give you resources, and that way you feel more competent to be able to really bring those resources in-house. But to really make a difference, like high level, you want to diversify that senior team and you want to diversify that board, because that level of strategic direction is what's going to trickle everything down.
Absolutely, very important points. And yes, partnerships are integral. If you don't have the internal capacity, leverage your partnerships. Partnerships will give you credibility, but also access to the populations that you intend to serve. Diana, you mentioned boards, and our third question has to do with metrics. How have Latinos been represented on credit union boards in the US? Do we know how many Latinos are serving on credit union boards? And how can we improve this representation? I'm just going to say that on the data that you seek, Gil, we don't necessarily have the data. I would encourage all credit unions to provide that data. And right now, a central repository for that data might be, for instance, NCUA's ONWE, where you can self-report on much of this, because the fact is that what we don't know, and we can make assumptions that certainly are wrong. But I think that in general terms, the question might be, how can we improve representation in our board of directors by Latinos?
I think you had mentioned leveraging partnerships. I think that's a good way to be able to improve your representation in your board. So really look for those key high-level partnerships, Hispanic individuals within the community that are highly visible, that are really there to make an impact and to help the community, to be able to bring them into your board, so that they're able to have a seat at the table and shed some light on some of the things that the community experiences or where they might need more help with, so that your credit union can start working towards those.
Yeah, really building, I think I want to complement that, and building a pool, right? So just how, we say, Latinos are all about referrals, right? We know family and friends, so same thing. I mean, we all know good people, like to your point, Fabiana, call them out and really go, hey, you would be great for this board, or you would be great to help us make a difference. And if there's no opportunities there, maybe appoint yourself to be one to lead some sort of community advisory group where you put together all of these people that are just fantastic. And that way, if you ever have a CEO saying, hey, do you know anybody that would be interested? Yes, absolutely. We have this pool of people and, like-minded individuals that can really make a difference. So I think if it doesn't exist there, or if you don't know, build it. And I think that you can become a resource for others too.
Fantastic. So let me tell you that our participants are very active, and there are a lot of questions that probably would take us over the time that we have for this panel. So I'm going to combine a few.
There's amazing questions on this chat.
Yeah.
There are. Yes, thank you so very much. So one of the topics that we have already touched on, perhaps not as deeply as our participant would like to, but has been on mentorships. But there are other questions also that kind of speak to the same, which is really just building that culture that is supportive of Latinos, and not just the culture, but the capacity. So to what extent do you have within your own organizations, either folks who are Latinos in your HR departments? To what extent are you receiving sensitivity or cultural training? And then I wouldn't say, to what extent have you been participating in any formal or informal relationships that perhaps, mentorship relationships that perhaps your employers have brokered on your behalf? Very long question, I know. I'm trying to combine a number of them, a number of subjects into this, but panelists, if you wouldn't mind just chiming in with any insight that you may have on any of these.
So one of the questions was the mentorship, right? We don't have a formal mentorship program at our organization, but I know how beneficial it is to have somebody that is able to help you manage those situations that sometimes you're not sure because you have never experienced them before, because you just might need somebody's different point of view and perspective. I mean, we know from a fact that diversity, that's one of the beauty of diversity, is that with different points of view and different ways of understanding and seeing things, you can come to great resources and solutions. So having that, I think it's really key to be able to grow your talents. And if you don't already have that resource in your organization, maybe work with your HR department or your own department if it's implemented across the organization. It's not an opportunity at the moment to be able to identify key people in the organization that will help you advance that agenda.
And I would like to add on that. One thing that we are doing is our CEO, well, in the past, before pre-pandemic, we would go out to our local community colleges and we would give a financial class. So he would speak it. He made the effort to learn some Spanish as well. So myself or our HR leader, who's also Latina, she would go out and we would translate as well or give a presentation on our own. So by doing so, we also were giving out where they were giving opportunities to come in and have an internship, and it was a paid internship. So that was also bringing in people and allowing them to have the experience of to work for a credit union.
Fantastic. We, again, are coming close to that witching hour. And I do want to give the panelists an opportunity to give us some closing thoughts. And so Diana, let's start with you.
All right. So closing thoughts. I think as a takeaway, I think maybe for the participants, I would challenge you to maybe reach out to one of us, or even to one of another participant that you see here, because it's so important to know what's working at other organizations. And there's so many great questions that are coming in, and as you mentioned, there's not a lot of time for them, but being able to share the knowledge and build that collaborative networking profile is so important. So really, I challenge you guys to reach out to one of us and talk to us and see how we can help you.
Awesome. Fabiana.
I love that. I have done that myself with other organizations within our market and outside our market, and it is so wonderful to see and learn from each other. And there's so many people that are willing to share their experience with you and to let you know what has worked for them. And I think that is great, and one of the wonderful things of the credit union movement and part of being in this organization. And another thing that I think is a great takeaway from our discussion today is the beauty of diversity. And that is really something that we need to see more of and bring more to our organization. Being able to have a large, diverse group of staff and workforce is just good for the long run. It's just a good business model if you really want to stay relevant for the future.
Thank you. And you, Marisela.
As Diana and Fabiana mentioned, networking is key. It's, just to share that knowledge, that experience, that's just something that you can't measure. So networking is definitely something that we should all implement. Another thing is also just keep in mind that training is very imperative as well in the beginning stages and continuously. So for me, those are like the two takeaways.
That is fantastic. I really want to thank the three of you for sharing not only your expertise and your professional talent, but truly sharing about your own personal stories. I think it's so important for us to hear what those stories are, to be not only inspired, but also moved to action by each one of you. So again, my thanks to you, to the participants who, as has already been mentioned, you can connect with our three panelists. You are welcome to also connect with Juntos Avanzamos, connect with NALCUP, and have these conversations that are so important. I think that as we focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have talked about a bit about diversity, a bit about inclusion. There needs to be also equity in this formula. And there are a couple of questions I think that already have some spice that relates to equity, right? I mean, I think about, for instance, our own staff, which is also just very diverse. But how do we as employers not only value, but compensate, invest in those employees who have particular skill sets? And those skill sets might be being bilingual, or having those connections or networks established within the community that we are aiming to serve. So that for me also is a big takeaway. Panelists, I started my credit union career years ago, and I had the fortune of starting out as a teller, kind of like Marisela, right out of college. And my CEO was actually a Latina. She might have been, one of the first Latina CEOs in the country. Certainly, she was the first Latina CEO in Washington, D.C. And having that role model really was what I think enabled me to dream of attaining a position of CEO in the credit union movement. Now, years later, decades later, seeing the three of you and knowing just how accomplished and talented you are, how professional, and with what generosity you're willing to share of your knowledge and expertise, it just gives me again that sense of I'm inspired again. I'm inspired to know that there already are people working on expanding what has already been hopefully built by my generation. Continue to inspire, bring on the next generation of credit union leaders, To all of you participants, again, thank you so very much, not only for your participation, but for your thoughtful questions. I am sorry that we did not get to all of them. They were all just fantastic. Thank you. So mil gracias to everybody. We are now going to head into lunch for the next hour. We are going to come back together for our next plenary session, where we are going to hear from Jody Harris, who is the director of the CDFI Fund. We're going to hear as well how community development credit unions have stepped up as financial first responders during the COVID-19 pandemic. This Zoom meeting is going to be closing fairly soon in the next few seconds, but you can proceed to the conference homepage to access the link for the plenary sessions. And we are going to be coming back together at 12:45 Eastern Standard Time. I look forward to seeing you all around. Thank you again. Gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you. Gracias.
Adiós. Gracias.
Ciao.